Friends. Welcome to Flosstube and Variety Show number 132. This is Friday, October 25th, 2024, 10/25/24. I'm Emily Williams in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, and thank you so much for joining me today. And a special welcome and thanks for joining me to anybody who attended the oh my heavens. I was just watching two different videos, Flosstubes, about the Great British Sampler Weekend Comes to America, so that's on my mind. To Schoolgirl Samplers of Western New York, Jane Boyer, 1834, which took place this past weekend in Leroy, New York. It was such a pleasure to be up there with you all and in my old stomping grounds. And I'll tell you more about that event later. I'll describe it for those who weren't able to be there. But anyway, Flosstube generally has to do with cross stitch, and Variety Show means something else. And we always have to wait and see what the something else is. My table is a mess, which is probably a good sign for this video. I do have a lot of things out, and we'll just see what happens. So, what have I been stitching? Way back in July, I started this, Stars by Plum Street. Remember, this is the companion, it has a companion piece, ampersand stripes. So this is by Plum Street, and ampersand stripes is by Kitten Stitcher, Shakespeare's Peddler, Teresa Vanette. So I've been working on this. That's a massive barn, or yes, it is a barn. Massive, it's a massive barn. I'm not to the barn yet, but I did finish the bunting, and I've started down the side. This is white clay, 36 count white clay by Fox and Rabbit. And I'm using a mixture of the called for threads plus a couple of, a mixture of them, because I didn't want to use over-dyed threads for some parts of this. It didn't seem necessary, and I have almost every DMC, so I put some DMCs in there. But anyway, I was worried that the whitish color, which is 3865 maybe, that was not going to show up on this white clay fabric. But the way it's positioned, it is fine. I mean, it shows up in person, it shows up fairly well. It is a different color slightly than the fabric. So anyway, that's that. And I was realizing I have to have a plan for stitching patriotic, similar to the way I do Nativity Sal. Hashtag, what did we do? This hashtag, I don't know which way you're supposed to do it. Because my idea is to have some patriotic stitching finished by July 4th, 2026, which is very soon, because that's the 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence, and it's my 50th high school reunion, which I was the bicentennial class of 1976, so that means I better get going. I'm sort of thinking of doing patriotic on the weekend nearest to the 4th of every month, but that might not be enough time for the number of projects that I have sort of in mind, but we'll see. I did work on this week. And I also worked on Sampler 193, and I am really close. So since I last showed this, which was on my last video, I've stitched another 1,000 stitches, and I have 2,200 stitches to go, some of which is the borders. You see that I have a lot of the very outermost straight stitching border not done. And then there's all the curly cues and so forth in that last eighth. So it's very close. if I did nothing but this, I could do this in less than a week. Now, I'm not going to do nothing but this because I have a lot of things going on in my life and I have a lot of other stitching I like to do, but I am quite sure that this will probably be my next finish, unless I can't think of anything else that's as close as this that I want to really focus on. So that'll be finished soon. I plan to make it into a pillow, probably with piping. I have to try to match the thread color to some fabric, which will be easy. I like Kona cotton for that kind of thing, and I have a Kona cotton card, which I've shown on this video before. It's one of my favorite things to browse, actually, that and the dictionary. I know, weird. All right, so what else have I been stitching? So I made a video 2 weeks ago. Since then, I did have a weekend of kind of normal life, though my son and daughter-in-law came I guess I made a video the day they left. Right, I have not had any normal life since the last time I made a video. That's right, because we've had people here or about to be here, or I was gone. So, yeah, I don't even know really what I stitched. So I possibly worked on some more things, but since I can't remember and I didn't write it down, I'm not going to show you things that don't have any noticeable progress. So what I'm going to talk about now is my trip up to New York, and I will talk about sort of a more traditional variety show topic at the end. Well, before I talk about that, I got my quarterly fabric for being a level 4 or whatever it is, tier 4 Patreon of Fox and Rabbit. So this is 36 count Sandy Beach, which is very pretty. It's it's sort of a plain. I don't think there's much or any variegation in it. It's a very nice neutral tan sampler color. I hadn't seen that one before, so I'm not sure what whether it's in their regular line or not. And then when you hear Brenda and the Serial Starter say that even I can stitch on 46 count, I of course had to try some. So this is hog bristle, which is one of, I think, Fox and Rabbit's most appreciated colors. It's practically a perfect neutral, slightly warm neutral. So I got a piece of 56 count. And I'm going to try something. I have something in mind I want to do. It's a little small thing, which I'll hopefully start and maybe finish by this coming week. I could do that. And I'll tell you what I think of hog bristle. Now I would have surfine, a few different colors of surfine, and I might try to get a red surfine. There's a particular red I like that I have in mind. And that I think would be very nice on this. I think people stitch with 103 on it too, and I have quite a bit of that. So maybe that's what I'll do. So I have been stitching on one other thing, which I will tell you when I get talking about the retreat. So now let me talk to you about the trip. So I flew up to Rochester, New York, which is the airport nearest Leroy, New York. Notice how I pronounce that. It's Leroy. It is not Leroy, and it's not Leroy. It's Leroy. Anyway, that's sort of a local controversy up there too, but you can say it however you want. But correct is Leroy. Leslie picked me up at the airport, and the color was beginning to change. It wasn't quite peak color up there, and we drove home, and it was lovely, and came into town, went to their house, which is a beautiful house, and they have the most interesting glass doorknobs upstairs, which I'm going to put a picture of a glass doorknob in here. I think all the doors upstairs have glass doorknobs, which the house was built in maybe 19 30 or 25 or something, she thought, you know, somewhere back in there. And it's very nice. And they've done a lot of beautiful color selection for the walls and furniture selection. It's comfortable house. And I enjoyed staying with them. They're comfortable people. Anyway, so the next morning we went to Hobby House Needleworks. Yes, I had never been there. It is, you know, probably the second most famous needlework store in America based on Flosstube mentions. The first most famous being the Attic in Arizona. And we went there because I had never been there, because of course you have to go. It's like, it's a must, it's a destination shop. So it was the Wednesday after the Great British Sampler weekend comes to America. Leslie was afraid they would be cleared out of things of interest because 200 people had been shopping madly over that weekend. But I did not feel that they were cleared out. I don't know if they held things back in order to restock or if they just happened to have a huge amount of inventory. But I felt great about what I saw. And their cash register felt great about what I saw too, which is fine. So I did get a couple of charts, even though I wasn't really in the market. But this is by Hobby House. I think Kathy, the owner, did this. It's not that big. It's on 40 count, it's 4 by 5 roughly. So I think I might possibly make that my nativity Sal stitch. I could. I mean, I think that would be nice. I can also picture doing the red part in white thread on a piece of fabric. I'll show you in a minute. Anyway, I bought this just because it's kind of cute. So here's rabbits, very cute. This is JBW Designs. Oops, and then there's a little rabbit with there's no picture of it, but there's a rabbit holding an umbrella that you can stitch to put on the other side of this. I just think that's cute. It's done with a nice little pink thread. What does she say about it? Classic Colorworks. She doesn't give the name of it. But on 32 count fabric, it finishes at around 5 inches around. Pretty. And I bought this. Now this has been out for maybe a while. This is the pin pillow that's based on the Mary Alcorn 1764 sampler. And that sampler was is just now and still for just a couple more days, I think, available as a pre-order through the Homespun Needlework Facebook group. It's an exclusive. And I didn't get the sampler because I don't need another sampler. And I don't need another mattress finish pin pillow either, but I really liked this. There was the model there. I picked it up and held it, and then I had to have the chart. That's what happens. There were the models of the other items too. There's a drum and a spool and such that also go with that. But I like that. I especially like the stitching around the edge, the alphabet and the little border items. So I think I probably will start that. And Leslie gave me this. This is one I've admired. And it is not small. I mean, it's 126 by 165, but it's not huge. But I just think it's really pretty, very pretty. And Awake My Soul and Sing is a line from a hymn. And then we got into my linen purchases, and I am not going to show you everything I bought because most of what I bought is either 32, 40, or 46 count sampler colors. But I'm going to show you a few of the pieces that weren't that. So I bought this piece. This is beetroot by Fox and Rabbit, and this is 36 count. It's such a gorgeous color. So I was thinking about doing a Christmas stitch on it, and I have a few options. This, of course, has a much more prim look to it, the way that that's a brownish red deer, and those snowflakes are brownish, that same brownish red color. But I could sort of imagine the deer stitched in ecru, maybe, with on this fabric. I also have another Christmas thing that's supposed to be done. It can be done either red thread on white fabric or white thread on red fabric. So this is reddish. I mean, it's very, beetroot is exactly the color of it. So maybe it's too pink. And I bought a couple of dark blue fabrics, but then this was a splurge. This is 27 count banding. So I haven't measured it and figured out how many stitches wide it is. But you know, Simone of Sui Day, I think is how you say it, something like that. I did her Biscornu. I finished it recently, showed it recently. Anyway, she has done this series of bandings from samplers. And I have the book, and I think I could pick out my favorite 2 yards worth of bandings. I got 2 yards of it, and stitch it. And just do it from time to time. It wouldn't matter. You know, there's no completion date. Could use up the odds and ends of red threads that I have. I was able to get the red border, which I really like. And I haven't figured out exactly how many threads wide this is. This is natural, let's see, ticking stripe, red and natural linen. So I got that. And Leslie and I did a little exchange, which I came out far to the victor on. Victor, that's not quite the word. But I had a yard of just the ticket in 36 count. And we had agreed that when we start Hannah Green on January 1st, which we would love to have your company, by the way, that we would do that on 36 count, just the ticket, which at the time that Leslie was looking wasn't available at Hobby House or wherever else she looked. And I said, well, I have a yard of it. I have plenty for us both to do it. So I gave her the piece that she needs. I can't remember the dimensions, but whatever it is for that. And I cut a piece for myself. So that is ready to go for our January 1st start. I just have to pull the threads out of my DMC. I'm doing it in DMC. I think Leslie is as well. And then she, in exchange, gave me a piece of the hard to get, hard to come by, dirty teacup. This is 40 count, and isn't that gorgeous? I had never seen it in person. I've seen it on Flosstubes, and now you can see it on a Flosstube. It is. So I'm not a huge fan of the mottled fabric, but this is the most beautiful mottled fabric that I have pretty much ever really seen. I have a couple of mottled things by Fox and Rabbit in my stash, which I like. But this is gorgeous. 40 count. I have a half a yard because Leslie was overly generous. Yes, Leslie was very generous. Overly generous. Anyway. So, Schoolgirl Samplers of Western New York. Jane Boyer, 1834. I've stitched the model for that this spring. And I looked back, and I believe that the first of my videos where that's discussed is number 105, and I think I finished it by 113. I stitched it from February 5th through April 24th. And there was a gap in there because we went down to Texas for the eclipse, and there were a few other days, things that came up that I didn't stitch it every single day. But that's when I stitch it if you want to see my comments about it as I went along. It was great fun to stitch, and I stitched it entirely from the chart that Leslie created by looking at the antique, but I had never seen the antique. So I went to Leroy to be part of this event, and I got to see the antique for the first time there in the Leroy house the afternoon of our event. So that was really, really something to see that. And it's just as Leslie described it. It was clearly very well taken care of by the family and by the Historical Society. And it's a beautiful, elegant sampler in person as the chart that Leslie created. If you want to get that chart, I'll put the information about how to get it in my description field. In fact, I must remember to do that, because you can now get the chart from the Leroy Historical Society. I think it's actually coming through the Jello Gallery, which our participants also got to visit. That's such an interesting historical thing, that Jello was invented and first manufactured in Leroy, New York, a little town. Otherwise, possibly, well, I was going to say insignificant, but it wouldn't have been insignificant because Ingham University was there, which was the first post-high school college for women, I think, in the country. So anyway, our event, 51 people came, and we had a waiting list. Those of you who are watching because you came, thanks so much for coming. I thank you again for coming. Leslie and I were so thankful for you all and so pleased with your attention and your participation. And when we set the registration to open at 9:30, we were thinking of people who were traveling from Pennsylvania and other places at some distance who might be making a day trip, or from far away in New York State even. You know, wanting it to not be so super early that it would be difficult to get here. And I would say 3/4 of the room was full of people who had registered and were already in their seats by 9:30. So the buzz in the hub was really fun. And it was so fun to see our friends who had come from California, South Dakota, and Ohio for this event, that we had met them last year in England at the Great British Sampler Weekend, and they came for Schoolgirls of Western New York. So fun to see them. You know, it is absolutely true that cross-stitch brings people together. It's a common interest that is absorbing enough to create sort of instant connection, and in many cases, lasting connection. So thanks so much, Roxy and Peggy and Patrice, for coming, and Warren and Lee for coming. Warren and Lee did not participate in the event, but it was great. So Leslie had a cold, or she didn't have a cold really, but she was getting over a cold, so she had a cough, and at one point she turned the microphone over to me to read her talk, and I read a couple pages, and then she was sufficiently lubricated that she could continue and finish it off herself. We had a talk by Lynn Beluccio, who's a municipal historian for Leroy Village and Town. She just knows so much about the history of that area. And one of the things that struck me as I listened to her talk is I sort of imagined when the Boyer family moved to Leroy from New York City, that they were moving to the Leroy that I knew, that it had streets and houses and churches and shops and all of this. And it did have those things, but very recently before that, it didn't have those things. Because as Lynn pointed out, it was somewhat deserted during the War of 1812 for fear of British invasion into that part of New York State, coming from the Niagara Falls area. So it was quite, I mean, I hadn't really thought about how pioneery it was, how frontierish it was, even in 1831 when the Boyer family moved to town, because that was less than 20 years after the War of 1812. So, I mean, it's kind of remarkable. And the Leroy House, the people there were in costume from the 1830s. That was so nice. And the samplers on display were beautifully displayed, and little cards saying what we knew of them, and the Caledonia Historical Society, Caledonia being the next town over to the east, about 10 miles or less, let us, meaning Schoolgirl Samplers of Western New York, borrow some samplers from their collection for the display in the Leroy House. Some very beautiful and interesting samplers were on display, and it made me want to reproduce all of them, frankly. So Leslie, get on it. Yeah. So anyway, it was, and then we had door prizes, and there were some lovely door prizes. Special thanks to Hobby House for donating a beautiful shaker, is that what they're called? Shaker box, sewing box, with the, you know, the handle and the lid comes off and the little tray, and it's very beautiful. And congratulations to the person who won that. And we also, one of the door prizes was a Halo Go light, which is the same kind I use, and another one was a full kit for Jane Boyer, and so that's great. I think Leslie is making arrangements with that person. And so on the table were, so my ruler, I wonder where that went. Anyway, there was a ruler, and there was a piece of red cloth and a piece of green felted wool, and an inkwell. And the idea was that if you were a schoolgirl in Western New York, you might wrap your lunch in a piece of cloth. It might as well have been red. So that was part of the table setting. And you would have an inkwell on your table, which is our Ort jar, and I'm using mine right now for that. And Leslie glued a magnet to the inside of the cork so that you could put your needle on it if you wanted to. So there was an inkwell, and there was some wool, which is a pen wipe. It was you needed to have something to wipe your pen on if you were going to be writing with a quill pen or a dip pen of some sort, because it would get all blotty if you didn't wipe it off every now and then. And we also gave everybody a pattern to make a tomato out of their red fabric and their felt, and I made this was the proof of concept. The pattern wasn't ours, but in order to make sure that the piece of fabric we were cutting would actually make the tomato as the pattern said, I just whipped this together. It's funny because I made it one of the afternoons. I just hand sewed it and then stuffed it, and it was there at the event. Although when I wanted to show it, I couldn't find it. I don't know what happened to it. Somebody said maybe it fell on the floor, but then I wanted to bring it home. Well, it was full of stuffing, and let me tell you, there was not room for this much fiberfill in my suitcase. So I took the seam out of it and took the fiberfill out of it and put it back in Leslie's bag, and I brought it home flat. And as I was thinking about making this video this morning, or maybe it was last night, I thought, oh, I should stuff that tomato again. So I found Byron's fiberfill and stuffed it. I think it's just so cute. So cute. This is a fabric reproduction, Jane Austen. My goodness. Jane Austen fabric. By the way, I'm sorry if you hear the dishwasher in the background. That's how it is sometimes. So that was fun to make. Oh, let me tell you about the project. So Leslie designed 2 projects to go with this, with our workshop. This is Jane's alphabet. These are letters from the alphabets in the Jane Boyer 1834 sampler. I think it's beautifully laid out. And so we got fabric, Vintage Country Mocha in our desired type. I chose 18 count Aida. The thread for that and the next little project I'll show you. So I've taken the green out, but there was a green in here because I've been using it. And the items needed to finish this, including a little piece of mat board and some batting and a paddle thing that can be glued on, and washer and magnet setup so that I can create this item and put it on here, and banding of that same width or some other thing of that same shape can be swapped out if I just use the same magnet and washer setup. So that is going to be interesting to put that together, paint it, and so on. So that was Jane's alphabet. And Leslie had these produced. I mean, they're beautiful. She did a beautiful job. And this is the home is where the heart is. And the idea here is that this house right here is the address where Jane Boyer's family lived. It's just down Main Street from where we met at St. Mark's Church. And this is a Gothic revival is the architectural style that the house is now. And it's a beautiful house. And this is what it possibly looked like, which is a Greek revival house. It was remodeled from something, possibly this, into this. And so Leslie sort of imagined what the house might have looked like before being remodeled, and that's what this picture is. And so both of the charts are in here for either one of these. And the date is on here, 1850 and 1822, which is when the house was originally built on that lot. Leslie did a huge amount of research for her presentation and to understand more about Jane's family and both her parents and how they came to be in Leroy, as well as her siblings and her children. So it was really interesting. And so the finishing things to make those things, the backing fabric for the little pin pillows, which it's theoretically enough for only one. But I might be able to get both out of there. And I did start stitching the 1822 house. And it's so fun. It's fun to stitch this because, of course, I've been immersed in this project, in this event, but also because it's a Leroy house and Leslie designed it. Now, Leslie, if you look closely at this, you will see that I miscounted. It is not the way it's supposed to be, but when I figured it out, I had done too much and I decided I'm not fixing it because it's still going to be a rectangle. It's still going to be fine. So if you want to pause the video and see what you think about that, and any of you who were at the event and have the chart, you could probably figure it out. So I actually think that my piece of fabric, this is 18 count Aida, I think I can get both houses, one here and one here, and then do the Jane's alphabet on this side. I think I can do that. That's my plan. If I don't keep miscounting anyway. So our friends, Roxy gave me this cute little trick-or-treat bag, and it had treats. It did. And Roxy, as I said, this was perfect to stick in my backpack. And I just pulled out the treats and ate them on my way home on the airplane. I mean, they gave me some treats on the airplane too, but you know, they don't give you enough. And Peggy and Patrice gave us, well, I shouldn't say this. Somebody gave us each. Kohana scissors. I have never had any. I'd never touched them until I said to Peggy, oh, can I try your scissors? I mean, they have the most satisfying snip. They are, I understand why people like them for embroidery. And they have this little leather sheath, which is good because the points are pointy. This beautiful little tassel. They come in the nice wooden box. Still blown away by that. And I've been using them. I mean, I have other scissors. All of us probably have, each of us has more scissors than we need. I think that's probably a fair statement. I know that I have a number that possibly has 2 digits in it of embroidery scissors, but these are unique, and not only are they special as scissors, but really, Peggy and Patrice, I mean, friends who gave them to me. Thank you so much. It will be part of my memory of this day. And they chose the blue color because it's Jane Boyer's color. And I just think that is special. And it's a beautiful blue color as well. I mean, I do wear a lot of blue, don't I? So anyway, that was just mind-blowing. All right, now to make this, to try to get back on track with variety show that's more variety show, I did want to talk about a book. And the reason I'm talking about this book is because the Richmond Reads program, which is the Richmond Library in Batavia, New York, 10 miles from Leroy, which is where Leslie was a librarian, has a Richmond Reads program, and their author gathering was maybe last night even, or 2 nights ago. And their book for this coming, or this cycle, was The Last Ranger, and the author was there. But I think this might have been the first book of the Tale for 3 Counties. And that is a similar thing. You know, in that case, it was 3 county library systems agreeing on a book that everybody could read, and then the author would come. And this book, Peace Like a River, is one of my favorite books. Leslie was the head of that committee, or on that committee, book selection and organizing committee for that event, and they had 14 years of it. And most of those years, the book that they selected was one of my book club's favorite books, because I would always say, well, Tale for 3 Counties is reading this. And so Leslie gave me a copy signed by Leif Enger. This is an excellent book. I have mentioned before, and a few of you say you're reading or will read, Ordinary Grace by William Kent Kruger. That was not a Richmond or a selection by Leslie's group, but another book. Somehow I learned of that author through her. Maybe it wasn't connected with that. But this is kind of, has some similar elements to it. It is a coming of age kind of book that has a faith component to it, and there's a tragedy that happens and an adventure, and it's one of my favorite books. It really is. So if you finished with Ordinary Grace and you think maybe my recommendations have some merit for your kinds of things that you like to read, you might want to try this. Our book club read it back when it was first part of the Tale for 3 Counties book reading, which was, I think, the year it was published, or the year after it was published. That was 2001. So probably we read it in 2002. And then we read it again maybe 5 years ago, because we've had some changes in our book club, and every now and then somebody would say, well, it's not as good as Peace Like a River. And everybody who had been in the book club back then would nod and say, yes, you're right, or no, I think it's better. And the new people didn't know what we were talking about. So we said, okay, we're going to make this a repeat performance in our book club. So for those of you who are tuning into this Flosstube for the first time, books, games, recipes, those are the kinds of things that I talk about in my variety show, usually, along with stories. So you got the story of the retreat event today as a story. I really want to tell some stories about my mother's family because I showed this picture from the Leroy 1940 book during my talk, which shows some things which I'll tell you about in a future video. But those of you who were there know that that was my mother's family. And there's some stories that are worth me thinking through what they are and telling you. So I'll save that for some future video. It will be a future variety show. But, okay, I think that I have covered the things that are heaped about on my table. I think this coming week will be a more normal week in terms of my amount of stitching, the number of projects I put my hands on. I hope it will, because I've missed sort of the normal rhythm of it. And I hope that you will tune in again next Friday. I plan to make a video next Friday. I don't foresee anything keeping me from doing that. And sort of making it a more normal, it'll be more normal in length, which is usually around 30 to 35 minutes. It'll be more normal in contents. I'm not sure what the variety show will be about. It might be the family story. It might be that. And I think that's all. So I hope that you have a great week of stitching or whatever else you're doing. I hope that you are enjoying beautiful fall weather. Today was spectacular. I had the sunroof open and the windows open in my car as I drove home from lunch today. Spectacular weather. I love October. And I'll see you next week. Well, you'll see me next week. But I might see you in the comments. Please feel free to leave a comment. Any of you who are tuning in from that weekend, please make sure you look at the email that Leslie sent, I think yesterday. And in particular, it includes a survey, a link to a survey, brief survey. We really would love your feedback. We're thinking we'll do another one of these events. Not probably soon, but we would love your feedback. Anyway, okay. Many blessings to you, friends.